As the Director of Health Education Outreach at Stanford, my job is to find really engaging and innovative ways to translate health research and health recommendations for people in ways that they will stick and that they will be heard. And so that often leads us to a point where we need to get a little bit creative. We need to borrow from the entertainment industry, we need to borrow from the marketing industry, and we need to try and create educational content that really grabs the learner. So that's what we're going to be talking about a little bit today. And the specific topic that I speak about a lot is our relationship with food. And what I'm going to suggest to you today is that our relationship with food is in crisis, and that if we can find ways to rebuild that relationship, there are potentially huge benefits for our health outcomes and for our happiness. So Ceci already mentioned this, but I wanted to tell you very briefly about my own path to Stanford. When I was a little girl, I snuck out one night when I was supposed to be asleep, and I watched my older sister, who was allowed to watch a TV series called Fame. I don't know if any of you, I see some nodding heads, okay. There was a scene where there was a dance instructor who banged the floor with her stick and said, "You want fame? Well, fame costs, and right here is where you start paying in sweat." Do you remember that scene? And I was hooked. I thought, sign me up. I want to pay in sweat. I want this kind of a challenge. And it just seemed so compelling to me. So in that moment, I, basically, dance became my childhood passion. My parents were both immigrants to Canada at the time. They had left South Africa and Germany to give us a better chance at an education. So they were not thrilled with my choice of a career, but they went along with it. And then at the age of 17, I actually left home and went to Germany by myself to dance. And to my surprise, when I arrived, I met the real life version of that dance teacher with the stick. And boy, was she tough. She was a Romanian former prima ballerina. And that is exactly as scary as it sounds. And she used to curse in several different languages at us. And after 2 years, I remember she gave me the biggest compliment. She said to me, the best reward for a teacher is to make something out of nothing. And I was thrilled. That was like the nicest thing she had ever said to me. So after I left her class, I was given a job with one of the national ballet companies, and I had a typical, if you can imagine, ballet director. He was Russian. His name was Vladimir. I am not making this stuff up. And he basically said to me for 8 years, "You are not here to have an opinion. You are here to dance." And that was the messaging we got. And then at the age of 27, I suddenly had an incredible opportunity to come to Stanford and start an undergraduate degree. And it was both petrifying and incredibly exciting for me to have this opportunity. But what was the most amazing thing for me was that I was now in a place where people were asking my opinion and where I was allowed to have a voice. And that, for me, is what Stanford is all about. So I think I share the love for this place that you feel, and I just feel so proud to be a part of this community. Okay, so we're gonna skip through quite quickly through some statistics. I know you're all very, evidence-based research types in this audience, so we're gonna go quite quickly through the why are we having this discussion about our relationship with food. As the slide says, the world is getting heavier and America is leading the way. The solid lines represent obesity rates in America, in the US, and the dotted lines represent global rates. The news is not good. Currently, more than 70% of American adults are either overweight or obese. This is another way of presenting it. You can see the US at the top. This is OECD data from 2016. The US is at the top, and then it just gradually goes down country by country until we see Japan at the bottom. So Japan, omedetou gozaimasu, congratulations. And why is this happening? Well, it has to do with the things we are not eating enough of and the things we are eating too much of, not surprisingly. We are not eating enough fruits and vegetables. You can see the more intense colors, the blue and the orange, are where we are in reality, and the lighter colors are where we should be. So we're not consuming enough fruits and vegetables, and we're eating still far too many sugars, far too many fats, and actually I'll add salt, sodium as well to this list. So I don't want to dwell on this for too long. I'm sure you've all seen this data. I think you all probably saw this article in the New York Times that came out a few months ago. This is the Global Burden of Diseases study, and it basically suggested that 1 in 5 deaths each year is the result of poor dietary intake, and that in 2017, 11 million lives were lost unnecessarily. So, okay, we'll stop with the bad news there, and we're going to move on to, okay, how do we solve this? And unfortunately, while we know the health implications of this problem, and our physicians know the health implications, we all still kind of don't know what to do about it. And sadly, nutrition education is still not a big focus in medical school. Most medical schools in the US offer less than 20 hours of nutrition lecture in their 4 years. So that's less than 1% of the total lecture hours offered to medical students. And that translates into studies that have shown that 14% of physicians feel comfortable talking to their patients about food. I bet some of them are sitting in this audience right now. But I mean, it's really unfortunate that often the advice is just eat right and exercise, which leaves everybody feeling a little bit confused. So let's back up and go right back to the beginning. Picture the sound of a rewinding tape in your mind. And let's go back to the beginning and see where this relationship with food broke down. Because when we're born, we come into this world hardwired to love our food, mostly because initially the people who give us food are the people who love us the most. And so food is tied up with love and affection and attention. And sometimes you'll hear people saying, well, you know, food should not be a comfort. You shouldn't rely on food to comfort you. But food is inherently something that comforts us. And I would argue it's much more than just fuel. We often hear it said, food is fuel. But food is part of our history. It's where we come from. It's our heritage. It's our present, where we're living right now. And in some ways, it's aspirational. It's a reflection of where we want to go in life, right? So let's think about what happens then. If we start out so close to our food, what happens? And I would argue that we, as a society, have gotten very, very busy, and we have outsourced food to strangers. And sometimes they're not even human strangers. They're big factories. They're people or machines far, far away from us who we entrust to grow, process, package our foods. And all too often, what happens is that that food is then completely stripped of its nutrients, so it will last longer on the grocery store shelf. And a lot of very intense flavorants, a lot of fat, sugar, and salt, and a lot of very expensive marketing is added, making it somewhat irresistible to us, because evolutionarily we have come to a place in time where, back in the day, it was survival, and eating foods that were very rich was a way of surviving, and now it has become maladaptive to eat that way. So this has happened to us, and by the way, this is an interesting thought. Those foods that last for months and months on the grocery store shelf, the reason they last so long is because so many of the nutrients have been removed that even the mold doesn't want to eat that food. Is it really good enough for us? Is that something we really want to put in our bodies? That's an interesting question to ask yourself sometimes. So I would argue, and you may not agree with me, but I would argue that to some extent we find ourselves in kind of an abusive relationship with food, where we're eating the foods that are hurting us, and we know they're hurting us, and then we keep coming back for more. There was a series of ads several years ago that you may or may not have seen, and they were for a popular antacid. And in these ads, there was always a similar pattern. There was a fast food, like a hamburger or a corn dog or something like that, and then one of the main characters would try and eat the fast food, and the fast food would either eat or slap or somehow fight back against the person trying to eat it. And the byline for the ad was, when your favorite foods start to fight you, fight back fast by taking the antacid. And that ad really worried me, because I thought to myself, this is the very definition of an abusive relationship, where we're being told to continue going back for more suffering and just medicate it away. I asked myself, if I were to install a bookshelf above my bed, and every morning when I wake up, I notice I hit my head on it, am I going to start taking pain medication for my sore head, or am I going to move the bookshelf? And it just seems so intuitive if you think of it in that way. But the question then is, what can we do? If we agree that we are in somewhat of an abusive relationship, how can we redefine that relationship? And that's where I have been working at experimenting with different forms of messaging and different approaches to rekindling our love affair with food. Starting with physicians, it's always a great place to start. We launched several years ago a course that had multiple levels, recognizing that physicians don't have a lot of time. We launched a CME course, a continuing medical education course, that also had a component for patients, so kind of like a partner course, where busy physicians could actually refer their patients to the course to continue the follow-up messaging after they went home. The course was really well received, mostly because family physicians especially felt that they were at the front line of this problem, and they often felt they didn't have the skills. Many of the family physicians we worked with also told us that their own health behaviors had changed, and that was a big help for them. Just as, many years ago, we tried to get family physicians to stop smoking so that they would be more effective counselors for their patients who wanted to stop smoking. So another thing we tried to do with this content is we tried to make it, excuse the pun, but we tried to make it binge-worthy. We tried to make it easy to digest. We really wanted people to want to watch that content. And I'm going to show you a little sample of just the trailer. We engaged local food writers and sort of celebrities, if you will, and we tried to really bring the content to life. So this is a short trailer from that series. Around the world today, people are suffering from more diet-related diseases than ever before in recent history. The so-called Western diet has been implicated as the major contributor to our modern epidemics of disease.
We don't actually know what about the Western diet is creating the problems, but what we do know with a great deal of confidence is that populations who eat this diet, and it's normally defined as a diet high in meat, high in processed foods, with very little whole grains, very little fruits and vegetables, that populations who eat that way have very high rates of chronic disease.
When you think about the increasing rates of obesity and diabetes, you could really think of it as a tsunami wave off the coast. It's enormous. Physicians nowadays, more than ever, need to advise patients about food. Which foods to eat more of or less of and why. How to shop for, prepare, cook, enjoy healthy, delicious foods. Not just nutrition facts, not biochemistry, but food.
We are living in a food environment that fails to support our health. Taking back the control over our food preparation is essential to our long-term well-being. By examining our eating behaviors and learning the skills we need to reclaim responsibility for what's in our food, we can celebrate the foods that will protect us and bring us pleasure for the rest of our lives. So I'm going to skip to the slide with some of the data that we actually very recently received. And this is from more than 1,900 physicians who took pre-post surveys rating their own confidence in doing some of these things, like describing the fundamental principles of nutrition, conducting a motivational interview, and those sorts of key practices that would help them be better support people for their patients. The blue is the pre-bar and the red is the post. Obviously, this is somewhat biased. People want to tell you they learned a lot after they took your course, and also the people who signed up for this course were probably very motivated to begin with. But we did feel that maybe there was something there to this kind of entertainment education approach, especially because the public-facing version ended up enrolling more than 200,000 people. And so we really felt that maybe there was an appetite, and this is something I look forward to discussing with you further. Maybe there's an appetite for this kind of educational content. Another difference about this course was that we took a food-based approach rather than a nutrient-based approach. And this was really, for us, a way of saying, let's simplify. You know, when we talk about nutrients, people get confused because people don't eat nutrients, they eat food. So by switching the discussion from, you know, you need to cut your carbs, to saying, let's talk about what foods are part of a healthy diet and what foods you might want to eat in moderation or avoid, we hoped that it would become much easier for physicians to communicate around food. In general, and you know this already, diets, especially very restrictive diets, usually don't work. They fail because they're based on a kind of punitive, restrictive mentality. Lifestyle shifts work for many people, but short-term restrictive diets usually don't. I laugh because my husband, several years ago, decided to go on a vegan, carb-free diet, and he lost 13 friends and didn't lose any weight. So from personal experience, I have seen that this is not the right approach. A sustainable, you know, lifestyle shift is almost always the better way to go. We had started, even before the CME course, trying to encourage people to cook more often. And that also led to a massive open online cooking course, which hadn't been done before, and was also, you know, many people wanted to learn the basics of cooking. I can show you the trailer for that course as well. But that was really a fun, you know, it wasn't too dense, and it was a very compact, short course that's still running today up on Coursera. So I'm going to show you quickly that trailer, and then I'm going to take you into what we've been doing more recently. Our children are in trouble because we've outsourced the job of feeding them. The average American diet consists of about 70% processed food. Our desire for convenience leaves us relying on strangers to produce the food we feed our families. When we cook, we get to decide what is going into our children's bodies, and unlike the processed food manufacturers, we have a strong interest in the health of the people who are going to be eating the food that we make. If we practice moderation, then no food is forbidden. When our children are drinking juice as a thirst quencher during the day, then the sugar really starts to add up. If we do the best we can with the resources that are available to us, we can begin to have more control over where our food comes from and also how it's prepared. Let's start by thinking, what am I going to serve for my vegetables for this meal? Don't start with the protein. Start by thinking, am I going to make a stir fry? Or am I going to make steamed vegetables with a white sauce on top? Or am I going to make a salad as my vegetable? And then ask yourself, what would go well with that? Could I make a quick fish in the oven? Could I make some homemade chicken nuggets on the stove for the kids tonight? When kids see adults coming together around healthy foods, they'll often be more willing to try new things. Also, let little ones mix things in a bowl or add fruit to make their own smoothie, prep vegetables or mash things like potatoes or bananas or avocados. This gives them a sense of control that can help them to be more adventurous eaters. In the long run, a diet of mostly home-cooked foods prepared by someone who cares about the people eating that food will almost always be healthier for the whole family. So it's so funny when I watch those videos, I look at the kids and I think, oh my God, they're so small. Because our oldest son is now taller than I am. Like, that's how long we've been doing this work. But it's also a shock to me to see how quickly time has flown. And it kind of rekindles a sense of urgency about how much we need to really focus on this problem. What I have been working on in the past 2 years has been aligned with Stanford's long-range planning and priorities. It has become increasingly important, many people feel, to reach beyond our campus and even beyond our borders. And so we've set up a production team in the Global South in Cape Town. I got to spend a year there with the children. They went to school there. And we have now a wonderful team that works with our team here in the Global North to create basic, simple health messages. And they're aligned with the problems that are most pressing in those regions. So in South Africa, when I first moved there in 2017, breastfeeding rates were among the lowest in the world. And one of the ways we tried to address that was through entertainment education. We got celebrities involved. We interviewed community mothers and asked them why they would breastfeed. Basically, what we were doing was launching a counter-marketing campaign. We were trying to sell breastfeeding. And just for some little background information, especially in countries like South Africa and other low and middle income countries, because sometimes the water supplies are unsafe, formula feeding can actually be much, much more dangerous than it is here if we were to formula feed. So the stakes are a little higher, and that was one of the reasons we chose to focus on that topic. I'm just going to show you the trailer for this series, and then I have one more little snippet to show you, and then I look forward to hearing your ideas. So this was the Breastfeeding Campaign trailer. It was called 100% Breastfed.
I had very big plans for feeding my baby both times.
It always made sense that I was going to breastfeed her.
Before she was even born, I knew that.
I'm really looking forward to breastfeeding my daughter. I'm expecting a girl.
I believe that if I breastfeed my child won't get sick. Lucky that my mother knew these things. She's a domestic worker. She knew certain things not to give a child at certain age.
I grew up in a township. When I had a baby, I suddenly remembered actually how many women gave their children formula instead of breastfeeding.
Fathers are especially important in the supporting role in the household.
If you can breastfeed your baby, please do.
If you breastfeed your child will always be closer with you. The first choice for my baby.
The first choice for feeding my baby.
My first choice for feeding my baby.
The first choice for feeding my baby.
First choice for feeding my baby.
So that series is now being used by the National Department of Health in South Africa, and it is to some extent marketing. It is mothers saying things, you know, like my baby, I feel like my baby's going to be closer to me, you know, those sorts of things. It's difficult sometimes when we have to, allow more of a subjective tone to come into these learning tools, and we try and keep everything in the series very much evidence-based, but to some extent, especially in places like South Africa, we were encouraged because of the high rates of diarrheal disease and death to really take those comments, and even if we didn't have, if they seemed a bit subjective, to really use them as the formula manufacturers had used their marketing tools to create the problem in many of these countries. I'm gonna leave you with one last sample, and it was a challenge we were given to create an animated style for South Africa and for use in the region now, which had absolutely no ethnic or socioeconomic markers. So they asked us, could we please start making content that could be easily shared with all different kinds of mothers in all different walks of life, and in fact, they wanted to adapt the content for use in other African countries in the region. So we really had to pare everything down. We also had to make it very small because of the cost of data in many of those regions. So the animations had to be very, very simple so that the videos could be 3 or 4 megabytes in size. And I just want to show you a part of a sample of one of those types of videos, and then hopefully we can have a bit of a discussion.
Today is Tabo's second birthday. Mama says that it's the end of his first 1,000 days, a time when we had to take very special care of him, so he could grow up healthy like me. Because it's Tabo's birthday, we will eat a piece of cake today. But Mama says cake is a once-in-a-while food. She says it's especially important that we don't eat once-in-a-while foods too often, or we will not reach our full potential. That means we will not grow as well as we could. So we will only eat sweet foods on a few special days of the year, and we almost never drink sweet cool drinks. Gogo says that sweet cool drinks contain too much sugar, and when we eat or drink too much sugar, it can make you overweight and have tooth decay. She says that when people are thirsty, they should drink clean water instead of sweet cool drinks. Gogo has diabetes, which means she can't have any cake or sweet cool drinks. But she says she doesn't miss sweet foods anymore. She says maybe if she had eaten healthier foods when she was younger, she wouldn't have gotten sick with diabetes in the first place. Umama says that's only part of the reason why Gogo got sick. She says that diabetes was in Gogo's genes, but I've never seen Gogo wearing jeans, so I don't really understand that part. The part that I do understand is that in South Africa, there are many unhealthy foods in the shops, like chips, sweets, fried foods, fatty meats, and sweet cool drinks. So, for some families, eating too much unhealthy food can cause big health problems. Mama says that it's important that we practice a healthy lifestyle, which means that most of the time, we eat just the right amount of healthy foods and we get plenty of physical activity. For Tabo and me, that just means lots of exercise during playtime. And that's easy for me. Happy birthday, Tabo.
My final word of actual content that I prepared for you today was this. I believe that when the hand that is stirring the pot has a vested interest in the long-term health of the people consuming that food, decisions will be made differently than if a big corporation is preparing food, because the interests are different, right? I want my children to be healthy 10 years from now. A big company wants us to come back for more. So how can we communicate that to people? And what are your thoughts on these different approaches?